Hello and welcome to So You Think You Can Dev, a KMS debrief on all things digital. Today we have Kathleen Lorey joining us. Kathleen is the Vice President of Strategic Services at RESICAP with a wealth of experience in product development, from enhancing product adoption to managing change of new products and features to making more data-driven decisions. Now, ResiCap is a vertically integrated solution for single-family residential assets. So that's single-family rentals, built to rent, and homes for sale. We're really excited to talk to Kathleen today. Welcome, Kathleen. Could you give us a little bit of information on your background and what you do at ResiCap?
Yes. Hey, Addie. Thank you so much for having me. So as you said, I am the Vice President of Strategic Services at ResiCap. Within our organization, we have development, we have data, we have project management, and our analysts. So we are the conduit between our systems and the business, which, is the core of product management. And part of my background, I have filled a lot of different roles, usually in some kind of shared services type of function. My passion in life is always project management, thinking about things in the project management triangle of time, scope, and resources, with the customer at the heart of everything that we do. And I'm so excited to talk about this because, you can build the most beautiful product with all of the requirements done, but if you don't have engagement from the business, and if from a product perspective, you're not starting with the customer in mind, you're going to be wasting a lot of those dev dollars.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you say that because I think that there are a lot of challenges, not just with building the products, but with, bringing them to market, getting customers and users engaged. I'd love to learn more about what are these challenges? Why is it so important to have this triangle at the forefront of your mind?
Yeah, I think that it also really starts with change management, right? Kind of asking in that phrase of WIFM, what's in it for me, and going to our different people and asking that. So when we're setting up a project, or we're going down the road of a major enhancement and even just a smaller one, we have to pause and say, all right, who is going to either use this data, and who is going to be our system user? Because we are not just building for the people who have hands on keyboard, we're also building it for our leadership team, right? So that they can get the most out of that enhancement. So what we do is we pause, we engage, we have cross-functional stakeholders who are engaged in our requirements gathering processes. And that's how we kind of get over that, because we have certainly brought things live with the understanding that it works one way, and then when it's in production, we find a new stakeholder, or we have built a report that doesn't actually tell our leaders more about their business. So it's making sure that everything that we do ties back to an ROI, whether it's in operational efficiency or in actual dollars in the door.
Gotcha. And it sounds like you could build the exact right thing on paper, something that a user has directly asked for, but when it goes to production, it still may not really fulfill the requirements that they truly have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as you're talking about, their wants and needs, sometimes users have to be told, hey, you're missing this. Like, this is something that is going to help you. And that's where the training component really comes in. So in our requirements gathering meetings, we will ask, well, how do you do this today? What is your workflow today? Because that's where we have to start. I'm not teaching you, hey, this is how you're going to use the system. I'm saying you use the system this way today, and when we release, we're going to use it this way. And so we literally have to create a breadcrumb trail from where they start until where we want them to be. So, and it's great. I actually most recently had we had a rollout. We're bringing on one of a big part of our business is third-party property management.
Mhm.
And so we were onboarding a new set of homes, and our our accounting team, we showed them, we created a little process for them to be able to add the tenants to our systems. And usually, sometimes it's a manual process, sometimes we can do different things. And we created an import for them. And I had one of our users come to us afterwards and say, "Hey, can we use this for a different process that we
Mhm.
have?" And it took that good relationship between IT, strategic services, and the business, and including them the whole way so that they understood how it worked. And they actually came up with a, hey, this can be applied other places.
Mm.
So by going through that change management process, it's a force multiplier. All of a sudden, I'm not just improving one thing, I'm improving two things.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a real difference between here's the product, here's now you have to use it this way versus a approach that can really spark inspiration in someone that kind of sounds like the light bulb went off.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah, and I
Absolutely.
think something that you're touching on too is this concept of product adoption. So you have change management maybe at the business level. How do you ensure a smooth adoption for new products or features?
Sure. Um, so we definitely, it always has to begin with the end in mind. So again, we try and find who our stakeholders are. And then we've really tried to instill a culture of no timeline. Timelines always exist, but in terms of adoption, we have to know that our stakeholders, some of them are going to get it right away, and other ones, it's going to take time.
Hmm.
So, what we do for our leadership team is we arm them with reports, we arm them with expectations, and we say, this is what you should expect. This is what you're looking for so that they can monitor on their level. With our users, we want to work alongside them. We want to be available as they have questions, especially after releases. And the other thing is that we have an expectation that it's going to take time. Sure, all right, you don't put something in one field, but you put it in another field. We can tell someone the why that they're doing something, but until they're able to see it in practice and see the benefits of what that change is, either for them or for their leader saying, like, hey, I saw that you did this. This was great.
Hmm.
That positive reinforcement, just in that knowledge, really helps take it to the next level and helps cement the adoption, not just at go live, but months and years later.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. I think that can apply in a lot of different things, right? Is people will see the value when they see the value, not in beforehand. Um,
Mhm.
and just kind of creating the opportunities and the positive reinforcement within their team and their leadership, is one way to just encourage that. Um, and I think that that does bring up another question too. You have customer expectations. It's important to meet those. How do you balance that against what's feasible from the development side and what you're able to build? And I think one of the kind of realities and nightmares of development is scope creep. And how do you manage all of these different expectations?
Sure. Well, we go back to the project management triangle all the time, right? So so we do two things that I really think are rooted in transparency. Number one, if we have if we are doing something or we have even talked about something, we write it down. So we use Azure for our dev teams, and we use another tracking system for when we're working with the business. And we have dashboards, and we make it very transparent of what is being worked on, and even more importantly, what is not being worked on, and we talk about it. I think that sometimes people get into my kind of role and there are organizations where there have been real consequences for saying like, no, we're not going to do that.
Hmm.
And I'll tell you, we have just the most phenomenal leadership team here at RESICAP, where we're able to have very productive conversations and about like what is and isn't possible, and always aligning it back to what the strategic goals are for our organization.
Hmm. Do you
So.
ever manage pushback from the customer, and how do you kind of deal with that in a way that's effective?
Sure. I mean, whether it's effective or not, I think is a question for my stakeholders. But I find that maintaining the right relationship and speaking to someone that starts with what is the need, and also like what are we afraid of? I always come back to that of like people are passionate. If someone's passionate about something, whether it's positive or negative, I'm in, right? Like I want to have this conversation with you. When people are afraid of things and afraid of what's coming up, it's usually because we're losing visibility, we're losing money, we're a part of our business would be at risk, right?
Hmm.
But even more, what I see, and luckily, the company's doing great, we're building, we're creating. The bigger thing is, can we do it fast enough, right?
Hmm.
And for that, we had the conversation of, well, what do you have to have, and how many people is this realistically going to take to be able to build and build in a safe way where we're not harming another part of the business? And with that, I would say that the leadership team is very good about that, right? About when we say, hey, these are the items that are available, and here are the risks associated with it. And we've made some calculated risks, and we're lucky that most of them have gone really well. We've definitely had some where it ended up being a late night because we're saying like, oh, you know what, this didn't actually work, and we need to make an adjustment.
Sure. I think that again, the triangle is very apt here. It seems like it's kind of all about balance.
100%.
Yeah, and I think another component that we haven't touched on yet, but that is going to be critical, is data. And I'd love to get your take on what role does data play in product development and in your approach?
Absolutely. So, I will tell on myself here that I had a go live where I did not pay attention to data. I knew
Mhm.
it was important and I thought we were good. But the level of attention, the level of nuance, admittedly, I messed up. I really we went live. We were so excited. There were some operational things, but really the visibility to the rest of the leadership team was it we didn't understand it at the level that we should have. And since then, and in addition to, we always kind of we keep that in mind. And so when we're doing our agile planning, when we are putting together our when we're putting together our sprint plans and everything, data has a seat at the table. We don't go through a sprint without having those conversations of, hey, this is what's coming out. We take a look at, we have a data warehouse. We take a look, is this going to impact any current reporting, or is there any new reporting that we could create because of this release? So we really try to start with, hey, if there is a benefit to this, how are we going to show our leadership team who maybe doesn't, that they don't have hands on keyboard? So how are they going to know on a daily basis that they're investing correctly, and that what they choose to come out with in the release is really having the benefit they expected?
Data has a seat at the table. I feel like that should be a slogan
I
for
know. I know.
that's and I think it's becoming more important too,
Mhm.
especially if we look at the role that data might play in emerging technology, AI. what are it's an unfair question to ask, but what are your kind of predictions for where AI and emerging tech will play a role in product?
Oh my gosh. Well, so where we're seeing it today is that our dev teams use AI, right? Whether it's to create code, review code, make suggestions in code. So we know that it's there. Um, I think that what I'm excited about is for AI to be able to start identifying stakeholder groups. So in marketing, we see folks come in and they have different kinds of customers, right? You have one kind of buyer and another kind of buyer. I wonder if AI will help be able to look at my customer list, look at all of their different attributes and say, hey, Kathleen, your customers are moving in town or they're moving out to the suburbs. Consider that as you're building this up, you're going to need more attributes for your communities that account for being a long way from their work. Um, I think I'm excited to see what kinds of suggestions come from it and what kind of analysis that it creates.
Yeah, I think personalization is a word that we hear a lot as a possibility in the future. How do you scope out when you're looking at project management? Do you see any impact there in terms of how you would look at the scope of everything that needs to be done for a product and release? And do you foresee any impact there?
Hmm. So I think the thing that I'm most excited about with AI is the personal GPTs that you can create.
Hmm.
So creating my own database of information, of documents, of writing samples so that I can have a conversation. Currently, my favorite AI is Claude AI. I feel like, especially as somebody who has learned about tech, but maybe doesn't have a technical background specifically, that Claude is great at walking you through complex systems. So, for example, we had to create a new Power BI report that was needed. It needed a new connection to our data warehouse. And without our primary team available, we were able to use AI to walk us through exactly what needed to happen. And, Claude, ChatGPT, Bard, all of them now have the voice components. So you can literally be at your computer and talk to it like you're talking to a person. And I think that that makes technology and getting to that next level, especially with our users, more accessible. And people want to engage because they can have an action, they have a very positive response, and then all of a sudden they want to do more. So from our perspective, our analysts are using it. Our QA is using it. Our dev teams certainly are, and all of those components together, it's a really nice combination of agent plus human equals better product, and that's what I'm looking for. That's what I want AI to be, is to make everybody's day better.
No, absolutely. I think that interactivity is such a game changer. Of I have a
Mm.
question, I can get an immediate answer. I can iterate on that question. I can ask it a different way. I think there's so much potential there that we're really just discovering now, I think. Um, no, I really appreciate you sharing that. And I kind of asked you to look forward, and now I'm going to ask you to look backwards a little bit. Um, so I would love to understand more about being a woman, being in technology. What was your experience like? And is there anything that you took away that you would like to share with other women in tech, or any challenges that you face that might help others who are in a similar situation?
Sure. So, yes, I am a woman in technology. I went to Georgia Tech for my graduate degree. So certainly I think I was one of three graduating women in my grad school class, and we had
Wow.
45 people. So it was definitely there. I've been really lucky that I've had some very strong mentors, both within my organization and outside of my organization. And always having somebody who can look at you as a person and identify your strengths and say, hey, when you're going after this really hard problem, or, when you feel like you're getting this pushback, or you feel like someone's not listening to you, not to go into like, hey, this is what a traditional way of handling issues are, but rather like use your own vulnerability,
Mm.
say all of your words. I had one of my favorite COOs, VP of operations I ever worked with. She would let a meeting rise, like, people throwing out different ideas. And she's like, okay, I'm going to say all of my words. And feel like that is so powerful for women who feel like they have not had a seat at the table, where they feel like maybe they shouldn't say everything. Melissa, name Melissa, she really emphasized how important it is to be transparent and to put everything out there, because with any kind of diversity, it's important that people understand your perspective, because we all live in our little bubbles. I used to think that everyone saw the world in terms of time, scope, and resources.
Hmm.
And the day that I realized that salespeople see things in terms of numbers, and like, did I hit my sales number or not? And they didn't care about anything else. It was a revelation for me. And
Hmm.
it's the same thing, right? That I have been successful when I am my authentic self, and when I'm not trying to put on the hat of how I've seen other people handle things, but I say, you know what? Here are all of my words, and let's move forward with that.
Yeah, I really appreciate hearing that. And I think the one of the takeaways that I'm getting is not just how I can be effective professionally and by being more vulnerable, being more honest and communicating, um, just as where I am in my role, but also maybe even be better at my job and communicating with other departments and organizations and saying, I want to hear from your perspective, how do you see things so that we can kind of meet in the middle. I think um,
Hmm.
that's something that in technology things can be very siloed a lot of the time.
Yes, yes. And I've certainly been guilty of it, right? Like,
Hmm.
someone comes with an issue and they're like, we really need the system to do this. And you look at them and you're like, who cares? And
Yeah.
so if you ever think like, who cares? Like, why is this person asking me for this? You don't have all the information. You need to be curious. You need to be asking more questions, right? And you may get to the point where you're like, yeah, nobody cares about that, right? And we certainly do that. I've certainly submitted things as project ideas and features and things, and it turns out you're like, oh, like, this was my perspective, but I really can now see things from somebody else's. So that great communication is so important, so important.
No, absolutely. I think that that's a wonderful takeaway. And I feel like I've learned a lot about project management, change management, almost the what's the high level that's going on behind product releases that isn't just the technology and the actual launch of it. And we are reaching the top of the hour. Kathleen, thank you so much for sharing your experience in product and how development teams can be more effective and execute with their customers in mind. This episode is part of our larger Women in Tech series, where we feature women who are making a difference and an impact in the technology space. Really appreciate your time, Kathleen.
Absolutely. Addie, this was so wonderful. It was great chatting with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And listeners, stay tuned for our next episode, which will be coming out shortly.